Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Ruby and I make sewing patterns. And today we're going to be making my Lucy tiered ruffle mini skirt design. There's a printed home pattern for this tutorial at the first link down below. It's a fairly beginner friendly project, but if you've never created gathers before, I recommend you check out this video just to get the concept down before you start this with like the fabric you bought for it. I'll still go into full detail on like how to create the gathers for this project, but that'll be linked down below as well. You can check out all my other patterns at the second link down below. Like and subscribe, please. And let's get into the tutorial. The print settings for this pattern should be scale 100% and double-sided off. You can use A4 or letter size paper to print. Just be sure to set the scale to 100%. This pattern is also compatible with Adobe Acrobat, and using Acrobat allows you to print only your desired size. To do this, open the file in Acrobat and select the Layers option, and deselect all sizes except your own. If you're printing from Adobe Acrobat, I like to use the poster setting. Once you've printed the pattern, you'll cut out each piece of paper along the outside of their borders. Then you'll match up each piece, one at a time, according to the pattern layout in the info file. You tape each piece in place and then cut out the pattern pieces in your desired size. Before you start cutting your fabric, note the cut amounts for each pieces. They'll either be cut 1 or cut 2. Each piece has a grain line. Your grain line should be parallel to the direction of the fabric with the main stretch. See how this side stretches more and this side stretches less? The arrow is in the direction of the greater stretch. If your stretch feels equal on both sides, choose either, it doesn't matter. Pin each piece to the fabric and cut them out using scissors or a rotary cutter. Be sure to cut out each notch or mark them with a fabric marker. The pieces with 1 notch are front pieces and the pieces with 2 notches are back pieces, except for the ruffle pieces. Those each have 1 notch and can be used for the back or the front, it doesn't matter. Once you've cut every piece, you're going to join the front and back pieces of each tier together, creating a bunch of circles. I'm using the skirt tier 3 front and back pieces here, placing them right sides together, and joining them at the side seams using a straight stitch on your sewing machine, the seam allowance of 1/4 inch, or using your serger. Then to close the circle, you'll do this again, joining the pieces at the other side seams, creating a perfect circle. Again, for your waistband piece and your tier 3 piece, you'll do the same thing, closing the side seams on both sides. And we're going to do the same thing again with these super long ruffle pieces. You should have cut 2 of each of them and you'll sew those 2 pieces together on both side seams. Do this for all 3 of your ruffle pieces. Now that every set is joined together, we're going to add basting stitches to the ruffle tiers so that we can gather the ruffles. Basting stitches are 5mm long stitches that are easy to pull when you leave a thread hanging off, and we're going to be stitching 2 parallel rows of base stitches all around the top of each ruffle piece. I use a scrap piece of fabric and stitch into it a few times, lift my presser foot and pull the fabric like 6 inches away, and cut the thread, leaving a few inches of those 2 threads coming out of the machine. Take your tier 3 ruffle piece. You're going to start your stitch at one of the side seams at the top of the ruffle piece. Make sure your threads are under and behind your presser foot, and using just under a 1/4 inch seam allowance, start your 5mm base stitch. You'll be stitching all the way around past the other side seam back to where you started, stopping just before you hit the starting stitches. When you get to that point, lift up the presser foot and pull the fabric out from under, pull about 10 inches from the machine, and cut the thread in the middle. Now you're going to repeat this, starting where you did the last time, using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure to tuck all of the strings behind the presser foot and do the same thing, stitching all the way around back to where you started. Do this for each of your ruffle tier pieces, and make sure you're doing this at the top, which is the side with the notches. Now we're going to be working with the tier 3 skirt piece and the tier 3 ruffle piece. For the tier 3 skirt piece, you can identify the top and the bottom by looking at the slant on the side seams. The wider side is the bottom and the more narrow side is the top. We'll be attaching the ruffles to the skirt piece at the bottom. I'm just pinning these to show you where everything is going to end up. You want those side seams to match and the notches to match on the ruffle piece and the skirt piece. So I'm pinning the side seams together here, and then you pin the other side seam and those other notches together. So you have all of these 4 points joined. You're going to take these out, but just so you understand where everything's going to go, I would do this. Our goal is to get this, where the piece is gathered all the way around. And to do this, we're going to pull those based stitches. So take that pin or clip out of the side seam where your loose threads are, and I'm grabbing one string from both sets of stitches that are on one side. Holding those strings very tightly, I'm going to begin pulling the strings and gathering the fabric along the strings. I just keep pulling and pulling the fabric along the stitches until I hit the first notch where I pin the notches together. Mark that notch again if you need to so you don't lose it, and remove the pin or the clip. Pull the gathers past the notch all the way to the other side seam. When I do gathers, I prefer to overdo it and then release the excess gathering onto either side. So first here, I'm over gathering the space between the side seam and the notch and then releasing some of that gathering past the side seam until the length of the gathers match the length of the skirt piece, while hitting the notch and the side seams matching up. Now I can do the same onto the other side of that notch until it's the perfect length. Once I have it lined up, I pin it as much as I can, and at the point where I started, I put a pin in, and to secure the gathers, I wrap the thread around the pin over and over and over, like 20 times. That way it won't come loose until I want it to. Now grabbing two strings from the other side, you're basically just going to do the same thing on this side. Pulling one of each set of strings at the same time, gathering the fabric until the gathers match up to the side seam and the notch, and again at the side seam when you started. Then you pin them together all the way across. Now that the gathers and the skirt match up, you're going to stitch the two together. You can do this using a zigzag stitch on your machine, or you can use a serger. Either way, you're going to go slowly around the skirt along the edge all the way around using a 1/4 inch to a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And now your bottom skirt piece should look like this. You can now pull out those gathering base stitches from the fabric using a seam ripper or just pulling the threads out. Now the next step is to create this second layer. It's going to look like this, so you need to stitch the tier 3 skirt piece, the ruffle tier 2 piece, and the skirt tier 2 piece all sandwiched together with the ruffles in the middle. So you're putting the gathers onto the skirt piece. The skirt piece's right side will be facing the ruffles' wrong side, which means that the right side is facing you for both pieces. I won't explain the gathering again. If you need to, you can go back to this timestamp. Once you've done that, you're going to take the tier 2 piece and place the bottom edge at the gathers with the right sides facing. Make sure you place the notches to the right places, with the double notches of each skirt piece meeting and the single notches meeting. So the front and the back are the right sides. Oh my gosh, you know what I'm saying. Put the back at the back and the front at the front. The wrong side of the tier 2 piece should be facing you at this point, and pin to the skirt at the notches and the side seams. Then slowly move all of those pins that you put into the gathers now into those 3 layers of fabric. So what we have here is the ruffles sandwiched in between the skirt layers. As you did before, you'll use your zigzag stitch on your machine or your serger to stitch all 3 layers of fabric together, stitching all the way around. Before you move on, be sure to pull out your base stitches. For the next layer, again, we're going to sandwich the 3 layers together, but this time, because the ruffles are going to show at the seam here, we're going to take this more slowly. As you did before, with the right side of the gathers facing up, gather the tier 1 ruffle piece to the tier 2 skirt piece. Now you're going to sandwich these, but before you do that, I recommend that you actually stitch the pieces together like this using your 5mm base stitch to replace the pins and make sure that your gathers look perfect because this side is going to show. Now you're ready to take the skirt waistband piece wrong side facing out and meet the back notches and the front notches and the side seams, pin this in place and add a few more clips or pins in between. Now you can zigzag stitch or serge the 3 pieces together, sandwiching just like we did the last time. Remember to remove your base stitches and we can finish the skirt by adding elastic. Cut a 3/4 inch strip of elastic to your size, which is indicated in the info package that comes with the pattern, and take the elastic, fold it in half, mark the center. Now bring one end to the center and mark the quarter mark, then bring the other end to the center and mark the other quarter mark. Now bring the ends of the elastic and overlap them by a 1/4 inch. Take it to your machine and zigzag stitch the elastic ends together, creating a perfect circle. With the skirt wrong side facing out, pin or clip the elastic to the side seams and the notches using those marks that we made. Now take this to your machine and using a normal straight stitch, stitch the elastic to the fabric only at the side seams and the center points where your pins are. This is to just base them in place so we can attach the elastic perfectly. Now you can use your zigzag stitch or your serger to attach the elastic to the fabric, stitching them together along the edge. Pull the elastic from both ends while you stitch so the elastic matches the fabric length. Now you're just going to fold the elastic under and do a little straight stitch right in the seam here so that the elastic stays in place. You just try to accurately hit the seam with a simple straight stitch, securing the elastic down. Do this for both side seams and you're done. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that this worked out for you. All my other patterns are linked down below as well. Like and subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions down below. Okay, bye.